Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Sarah Palin's lawsuit against the New York Times thrown out while the jury is still deliberating. The judge ruling for the New York Times, but the jurors aren't supposed to know it and are still supposed to come to their own verdict. It makes no sense unless the judge is just trying to get attention. That's coming up. But first, depending on which news outlet you watched over the weekend, a new filing from John Durham, the special prosecutor appointed by then Attorney General Bill Barr to look into the origins of the Russia investigation, was either a jaw-dropping bombshell or a whole lot of nothing. I have a hunch that the truth lies somewhere in between. The new revelations came to light in a filing from special counsel Durham related to the indictment of a guy named Michael Sussman, an attorney who was charged last September for making a false claim to the FBI. The indictment alleges that when Sussman went to the FBI about Donald Trump's ties to Russia back in 2016, he told the Bureau he's basically acting as a good Samaritan when he was actually representing someone connected to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, Durham's new filing in connection with that case mentions an unnamed tech executive who the filing alleges monitored private communications at Trump Tower. Quote, the government's evidence at trial will also establish that among the internet data Tech Executive 1 and his associates exploited was domain name system internet traffic pertaining to a particular healthcare provider, Trump Tower, Donald Trump's Park West apartment building, and the Executive Office of the President, or EOP. It continued. They had a, quote, sensitive arrangement whereby it provided DNS resolution services to the EOP. Tech Executive 1 and his associates exploited this arrangement by mining the DNS traffic and other data for the purposes of gathering derogatory information about Donald Trump. Now, the executive has been reported to be Rodney Jaffe, who was allegedly hired by Sussman. But I'm confused because it sounds like the tech exec was monitoring, the Obama White House as well, and they had a contract to access the information, but they exploited it to then gather derogatory information about Donald Trump, but about others as well. Now, if you only watch MSNBC and CNN, this is probably the first you're hearing about this. The Durham filing received only one mention on either of those networks, and that was on CNN today, just one. But if you watch Fox News over the weekend and today, you would have thought this was the biggest story since Watergate.
This is unbelievable. The Clinton campaign paid lawyers to infiltrate the Trump Tower servers and then later the servers at the White House. Unbelievable that they did this, and this is not a bigger story.
Yes, you heard that right. They hacked not just Trump Tower, but the White House. After Trump became president, they hacked the White House. These people who pose as defenders of democracy.
For several years, I have been saying Hillary Clinton made the whole thing up and infiltrated Donald Trump and really damaged his reputation. Pete, every American this morning should be outraged. The government and the media failed you.
All right, well, this media isn't going to fail you. This media is going to actually try to understand what is going on without the hyperbole while still taking this all seriously. So I'm turning to a couple of experts in this who can help and who have different views on this. Joining us now is Renato Mariotti, former federal prosecutor and legal analyst, and Hans von Spakovsky, a senior legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation, attorney who previously served in the Department of Justice. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Now, I don't do debates between guests on this show because I think it usually leads to people learning almost nothing. So I'll be talking to each of you separately for a few minutes, and I'll give you each a chance for a final thought or two at the end. So, Renato, let me start with you. So you think there's not a lot here?
I don't. I mean, this is, as you mentioned, this is a false statement charge. The attorney's being charged with making a false statement to the FBI. This is a filing about conflicts of interest. The allegations here have pretty much already been aired before. And unlike those news clips that you showed, this doesn't involve hacking at all. The allegation here is not that there's anything unlawful or criminal that happened. In fact, if you look at the filing from Durham, there's no allegation whatsoever of anything that was illegal. Now, it appears that they were doing something surreptitious with, information that they had, DNS information that they had. That may be a breach of contract claim. That may be something more, but it's unclear from the face of this filing what more happened. And so I have to say it does not reveal what some of those hosts suggested earlier today.
Well, but it does say, right, that this tech executive and his associates exploited the arrangement, right, that they had this existing contract, whatever that was, and that they then exploited that arrangement by mining the traffic and other data for the purposes of gathering derogatory information about Donald Trump. I mean, that in and of itself, putting aside whether it's illegal for a moment, does seem troubling, right?
Sure, I agree that it very well may be questionable. In other words, if my internet service provider is providing information about me to a third party, trying to look, share some of my personal information, that would be questionable, it would be concerning. But that happens all the time. The question is this a crime? Is this hacking? Something hacking about that. There's no unauthorized entry into a server, which is what hacking is. This is what it is. It appears to me like a questionable use of information. Whether it's improper or not, I don't know. Whether it's against a contractual clause, I don't know. But one thing that I do know is that it's not charged as a crime here, and there's no allegation that it's unlawful in any way.
All right, Hans, let me bring you into this.
Sure.
This is brought up in the context, as Renato points out, of a conflict of interest filing. It does seem sort of an odd tangent for Durham to be taking here. Respond to some of what Renato's saying and tell me why you think that this is a big deal.
Well, he and I must have read two different pleadings, because what the motion says is that the internet company was paid by the lawyers, consulted with the lawyers for the Hillary campaign, and what were they doing? They brought in other researchers and other internet companies to exploit a government cybersecurity research contract to gather proprietary and non-public information. In other words, there was an intrusion into the computer systems at the Trump towers and at his home. They then continued that once he became president by, again, exploiting access through a contract which was simply supposed to provide domain name service maintenance on the computer systems. And for it not being a crime, well, excuse me, but the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, that's at 18 U.S.C. 1030, not only makes it a crime to engage in unauthorized access to a computer network or computer system, but also to exceed authorized access. We had both of those things happen. We had unauthorized access at the Trump Tower and at Donald Trump's home. And at the White House, they exceeded the authorization. So there are potential criminal charges here. Now, this was not an indictment, and so they didn't mention
let me ask you about
the
that,
potential criminal charges.
I think that's an important point, right? So if it's not an indictment, I think question one would be, if this is so serious, why didn't he file a charge? I mean, it sounds like he's got all the information laid out there. If this is a criminal violation, let me just two-part question.
Right. Sure.
Why not charge? And secondly, it does seem this goes back to 2014, right? So is the idea that this company was spying on the Obama administration as well?
No, it does not go back to 2014. It says that the internet company started doing this in July of 2016. The standard statute of limitations for most violations of federal law is 5 years. And I suspect that while this information is in the motion, one of the reasons we haven't seen indictments, one is that the statute of limitations has probably run on what was happening in 2016. And second, it seems pretty clear to me from the motion that this tech executive is cooperating with John Durham and basically has been the one to tell them all about what was going on here. And that may be another reason why he has not been indicted.
All right, let me bring Renato back into this. Renato, what do you make of that?
I have to say, I still don't see anything regarding unauthorized access or exceeding unauthorized access. This is, yes, there's a contractual relationship, and they weren't looking at communications. They weren't going into a server, what they were doing is they were taking DNS hits and they were essentially passing that along to a third party to use against the person who was essentially making inquiries to a server. So I have to say, I don't think that's accurate. I don't think this is a CAFA violation. But separately, I also don't believe, based upon this, that this is a charge. Not only is it not a chargeable crime, there's no suggestion here that it's a chargeable crime, but I don't think that this individual is getting a free pass by cooperating with Durham. I mean, there's no suggestion of that here at all. So I have to say that's interesting. It's speculation. Maybe we'll hear more information, but based on the face of the document, I don't see it.
Hans, you get the final word.
What we had here was electronic espionage by one political presidential campaign against the other political presidential campaign. I think it is shocking and appalling that this happened. And just one final thing on it, this was worse than Watergate. Why? The Watergate burglars were captured immediately. Their wiretapping didn't succeed. They didn't get any documents. This high-tech burglary actually succeeded, and they gathered voluminous amounts of data for quite a while and were never caught at it. And I think it is just shocking that this occurred and that people aren't upset about it, no matter who they are, because no White House ought to get this kind of intrusion.
Yeah, and again, my take after listening to both of you is that it's probably not quite as bad as Hans is suggesting and maybe a little worse than what Renato's suggesting, but we shall see. Because I think we'll probably learn more about this. And if we don't learn more about this, then I think that actually supports Renato's argument more, because I think we will learn more about it in the context of Durham's investigation or any report he ends up issuing, et cetera. Renato and Hans, important discussion, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Sure, thanks for having
us. Coming up, shocking news regarding Sarah Palin's libel case against the New York Times. A judge deciding her lawyers didn't prove their case. He's going to dismiss it, but not until after the jurors finishing deliberating, when he will then ignore their verdict. Why would he possibly do this? It makes no sense. That's up next. A federal judge today tossed Sarah Palin's defamation suit against the New York Times before the jury even finished its deliberation. Federal Judge Jed Rakoff determined that as a legal matter, Palin's lawyers failed to produce evidence that the Times knew what it wrote about her was false. However, he will have the jury continue to deliberate since the ruling, he says, will, quote, inevitably go up on appeal. The jurors have gone home for the night, and they will continue deliberating tomorrow, even though the judge has already decided what the outcome will be. This is insane. The judge couldn't wait for the jury to reach its verdict first. He still has the power to overturn the verdict afterwards. But this just makes the deliberation feel like an academic game, which is almost insulting to the jurors and creates all sorts of possible additional issues that were totally unnecessary. Remember, the dispute between Palin and the Times stems back to a 2017 op-ed in which they falsely claimed there was a tie between ads run by Palin's super PAC and the 2011 shooting in Arizona, which killed 6 people and severely injured Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. The op-ed said in part, in 2011, when Jared Lee Loughner opened fire in a supermarket parking lot, grievously wounding Representative Gabby Giffords and killing 6 people, including a 9-year-old girl, the link to political incitement was clear. Before the shooting, Sarah Palin's Political Action Committee circulated a map of targeted electoral districts that put Ms. Giffords and 19 other Democrats under stylized crosshairs. But there was no evidence that it had incited anything. The Times eventually apologized for the error. Palin testified last Thursday for 3.5 hours, saying how humiliated she was. Quote, it was devastating to read again an accusation, a false accusation, that I had anything to do with murdering innocent people, and I felt powerless. As a legal matter, Palin had to prove not just that it was false, but that the editor, James Bennett, who wrote the paragraph, knew the statement was false, or at least had serious doubts about its accuracy. In his ruling, Judge Rakoff said in part, quote, my job is to decide the law. The law sets a very high standard. The court finds that that standard has not been met. Now, I've never heard of a case where the judge steps in while the jury is deliberating to announce what he's going to rule. So now the jurors are home for the night. They aren't supposed to watch or read anything. But if any of them do, or someone tells them something, and they go back and mention it to other jurors, the appeal he's talking about is totally corrupted as well. Back with us, someone who's covered the case extensively, Josh Gerstein, Senior Legal Affairs Editor for Politico. Josh, thanks for coming back on the show. Appreciate it. So was this a stunner inside the courtroom?
Well, I don't think the ruling was a stunner, but as you say, Dan, sort of the timing of it, I think, was something of a surprise. I mean, we did know that he was continuing to hear arguments on the Times' motion at the close of the evidence in the suit to throw the case out. But until this afternoon, we didn't really have an indication that he planned to rule on it immediately. And he never really explained why he thought it was important to deliver the ruling right away. He said he thought, in retrospect, that it would be fairer to both parties to lay out his view on it now. And that's about all he said on it. And so I have to tell you, I'm a little mystified, as you are, about what the urgency was. And maybe he's just not that familiar with the way the internet works, or the Times lawyer pointed out, some of these jurors, their cell phones may have been buzzing while they were deliberating, with the news alert from the Times and Politico and others announcing that he dismissed the case. So it's a puzzling, at least the sequence of events is puzzling.
Right, because he could have waited, and I've seen this happen certainly in a case where a jury comes back with a verdict and the judge decides as a matter of law that she or he is going to overturn that verdict, and you move forward from there. But you don't do it while the jury's deliberating. I mean, look, it makes it feel to me, you give him the benefit of the doubt and say maybe he doesn't understand how the internet works. I worry it's sort of hot dogging on the part of the judge, wanting to make much bigger headlines now, but it just doesn't make it, because it just doesn't make any sense. This is a seasoned judge. You should know better.
Yeah, I would think so. And, as we discussed earlier, he made this announcement without a thorough explanation of why. It's very common, as you say, to reserve on this kind of a ruling. And the judge just says, we'll take it up later. Sometimes he'll issue a ruling months after the verdict in the case, either upholding the verdict or tossing it out. So I don't know what he thought the urgency was here and why he thinks he has these jurors in sort of a hermetically sealed container when they're going home each night. And there's just no recognition of how easy it is for somebody, even somebody trying to follow his instructions, to see something on the internet in their email box or on some app as they go by, that I think could have a profound impact on the deliberations.
From watching the case, it does seem, everyone seems to agree the Times got it wrong. Times apologized. James Bennett, the editor, recognizes what he said was wrong. Were there any arguments that sort of landed, so to speak, from Palin's team that suggested that Bennett or the Times knew or should have known that what they were saying was false?
Well, I thought there was some. There was some evidence that Bennett, who was writing this part into the editorial, he had gotten sort of a research pack, and there was maybe 4 clips in there. And a couple of the clips made clear, or at least maybe didn't make clear, but had information in them that said that it hadn't been established if Palin's Political Action Committee's map had anything to do with the shooting. There was also a link in the copy that Bennett's colleague, Elizabeth Williamson, prepared to an ABC News web story that, if you clicked on the link, took you to a story with a subhead saying no link had been established between the PAC's map and Loeffner's shooting out in Arizona. So there was, I guess, circumstantial evidence that maybe Bennett did know that this wasn't accurate. But the judge said that didn't really amount to, remember, the standard here for actual malice is not just this high standard of, knew it was false or acted in reckless disregard, but also the person suing has to prove by clear and convincing evidence that took place. And the judge, in his ruling, the substance of his ruling today, said he didn't see how a juror could conclude that these 1 or 2 clips that Bennett says he maybe didn't read, maybe did read, but certainly didn't internalize, would explain him intentionally basically putting false information into a not a news article, but an editorial, which seems like, as we discussed before, a puzzling thing for a journalist to do, given the condemnation they're going to face.
All right, we shall see what the jury does, and then the judge just ignores it. So, Josh Gerstein, thank you for coming back on the show. Appreciate it. Dire warnings coming out of the White House, trumpeted by the mainstream media, that make it sound like a Russian invasion of Ukraine is a foregone conclusion. But is it really? Look, I don't profess to be an expert on this at all. But I've always found it hard to believe that Vladimir Putin would actually move forward with a full invasion of Ukraine and pay the price, both in terms of body bags and treasure. I've always presumed he just wants to make everyone believe that he's going to do it. And if that's his goal, it's working.
On the brink, Vladimir Putin expected to invade Ukraine within days.
The warnings of an imminent invasion get louder and louder by day.
An invasion could come any day now. And diplomacy, well, it does not appear to be paying dividends.
Crisis in Ukraine, the country on high alert as threats of an imminent Russian invasion reach a boiling point.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine could happen at any time.
Now, the White House has even suggested Wednesday as the day they believe this could all go down. And Ukraine's President Zelensky repeated that date, though he later claimed he was joking. But why would Putin essentially hand out a roadmap of exactly how and when he's going to do it? Yes, Russia has troops there, an estimated 130,000 of them staged and seemingly ready to go. But if they do it, this would be ugly on both sides. You can see on this map from the New York Times the red dots representing Russian troops surrounding Ukraine on their shared border in Belarus. They've been conducting military drills and exercises and reportedly getting into attack positions. But are we all just getting suckered by Putin? Scared so that he'll just have more negotiating leverage? Again, I don't know. But joining me now from London is political scientist Harun Yilmaz, a regional expert on Ukraine who initially wrote an op-ed titled "No, Russia Will Not Invade Ukraine." The op-ed was in Al Jazeera. He's since been discussing it on NPR and other places. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it. All right, so you are in the minority here on this issue. We are less than 2 days before the supposed D-Day, and you're saying it's not going to happen. Why?
Thank you very much. First of all, Russia, I think, will not invade Ukraine because a full-scale war in Ukraine does not fit into how the Russian administration uses hard power in geopolitics. The examples of Georgia, Syria, Libya, overall African operations, and so far Ukraine show that Russia pursues a cost-efficient policy. So a large-scale military operation does not fit into Moscow's cost-benefit calculus.
So what is all this information then, this intelligence, et cetera, we're getting, that not just that it's going to happen, not just that it's imminent, now that it's going to happen on Wednesday? I mean, is this all false information, do you believe, being put out by Putin?
Actually, I think, of course, there are analysts probably receiving some intelligence and connecting dots, but mainly, I suppose, Washington White House pursues a certain strategy there. They play safe, in one word. If Russia invades, world will have been warned. If it doesn't, Biden will emerge as a leader who made Putin retreat. So, but that's politics. It's normal. Yeah, I see it as part of negotiations.
So tell me what you think happens on Thursday. So according to you, there will be no invasion on Wednesday, right? Leading up to then, to Wednesday, I assume we'll start, if you're right, we'll start getting more indications that maybe it's not going to happen. What happens at that point?
Well, there won't be a climax. I mean, probably negotiations will continue. Russians and Europeans, Russians and NATO, Russians and Americans. And in the meantime, as you know, Belarusian and Russian forces are conducting joint military maneuvers until 20th of February. That will go on. So this was announced a month ago. It's not a surprise. We have also naval drills in the Russian Navy in the Black Sea and Azov Sea until 19th of February. Those things will also continue. But this is a long. We should see it as a long process. We are moving perhaps from one stage or the stage 1 to stage 2, and there might be even a stage 3. As French President Macron visited Moscow and Kiev, he concluded that this is not a matter of weeks or months. So this is a process.
And what happens if on Thursday we learn that there was an invasion? Do you have to start doing something else for a living?
Well, probably people in Russia or the Russian administration will not be surprised.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Dr. Yilmaz, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It's obviously a serious topic. Coming up, the 2024 presidential election right around the corner. Sort of, not really. A new poll says Democrats and Republicans may be coming together in one way. Trump and Biden losing major support within their parties, losing support. So could this mean the dreams of many not seeing either of them on the ballot could actually come true? When people talk about or poll for the 2024 presidential election, it's usually about the rematch of a Biden-Trump face-off, right? Which is really depressing for those who would like to see both parties find another nominee, who don't want to be forced to vote for either of them in 2024. A new poll shows more and more Americans feel that way. According to the new CNN poll, most Democrats want the party to look elsewhere in 2024, and almost a majority of Republicans feel the same way about former President Donald Trump. Here are the numbers. 51% of Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters say they want someone else to be the party's presidential nominee, compared to 45% who say they would like Biden to run for re-election. Former President Barack Obama had the backing of 79% of Democrats to run for re-election around the same point in his presidency in March of 2010. Meanwhile, Trump's current numbers are getting much worse. According to the poll, 50% of Republican and Republican-leaning voters want to see the 45th president take another crack at it in 2024. 49% would like to see another name at the top of the Republican ticket. Now, Trump had the support of 77% of Republicans in March of 2018. So what happens if Biden and Trump continue to lose support within their parties? Could this offer hope that we could have two fresh faces? When could that start to get real? Joining me now is Larry Sabato, director for the University of Virginia Center for Politics. Larry, good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it. So are these numbers real as a trend?
No. You said it yourself. It's not just around the corner. This is a year into Biden's term. Biden's numbers could get a lot worse. They could get a lot better. It depends on what happens. The same with Trump. And also fresh faces. Hey, Trump was kind of a fresh face in 2016. I guess when Biden first ran, he was a fresh face. It all depends on who the faces are. You can get tired of them quickly, too. What should give people hope, quote unquote, for those who want to vote for somebody other than Biden and Trump, is the age factor. And that's playing into this, too, especially for Biden. And most Democrats are talking about it, have been talking about it throughout his first year in office. He'll be 82 in 2024, running for a 4-year term. Come on. And Donald Trump will be 78 in that year, 78 and a half if he's elected, taken over for a second term. So we're really stretching the limits of age here for one of the toughest jobs in the world.
Well, and I think that, as you point out, is definitely a bigger factor for Biden because he just seems older, right? And I don't mean by appearance. I mean, just in terms of his question and answers, he seems slower in his responses, et cetera. But, how does this play out? I mean, you're right to say we got a long way to go, right? When does this start getting real? When do the polls start really mattering in connection with 2024 when people can say, okay, this is now the time to say maybe there will be someone else or maybe there won't?
Well, after the midterm elections, you're going to have candidates making decisions to run. It's not as though under our incredibly complicated system and difficult system of raising tens or hundreds of millions of dollars that you can piddle around and wait until the actual election year. That was left over in the 60s. You have to have planning. You have to raise money. You have to put organizations together. So I would say after the midterms, December, January, February of the next year, you're going to have people making a decision about whether to run or not. If Trump is vulnerable, you better believe that other people are going to jump in. If he has strengthened his position, though, you're going to have weaker candidates jump in who couldn't possibly or probably could not defeat him. With Biden, it may take longer because he's an incumbent president. And there aren't a lot of Democrats who necessarily will want to challenge an incumbent president halfway through a 4-year term. So I don't think they're exactly equivalent. And with Trump, you just never know. I mean, we've all seen for 5 or 6 years now, he never knows when to stop. He never quits when he's ahead. And he's not going to quit when he's ahead now either.
Well, how would you explain, though, at least as of today, this move, right, in the polls? And it's fair to say that, it may not impact 2024 by then. But what do you think explains why why so many more Democrats are now saying, I don't want Biden as the candidate, and so many more Republicans are saying, I don't want Trump as the candidate?
Overall, 70% of Americans say that things are not going well, that our conditions in the United States are off on the wrong track. Well, that's a pretty good indication that you're going to have an incumbent president in trouble. Now, the number isn't nearly that high within Democratic Party voters. It's much lower than that. But clearly, you've got a lot of Democrats who are seeing those numbers and saying, I don't know if we can get this guy reelected. And the last thing we would want is, if Trump is renominated, to nominate an incumbent president who's sure to lose. Of course, they don't have a lot of obvious alternatives either. That's going to play into this at some point. It's not as though Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is enormously popular either. So the substitute candidates are going to get a lot of scrutiny. And as far as Trump is concerned, listen, you know as well as I do, when you talk to establishment Republicans, and there's still plenty of them, they're a majority of the members of the Senate, for example, who are on the Republican side, they're praying that Trump will eliminate himself. They've been sick of him for years. They consider him a disaster, but they're not going to speak out against him unless he gives them the opportunity to. He already is, right, and he's going to give them that opportunity more and more as we approach 2024.
They need to see blood in the water. That saying, if you're going to shoot the king, you better kill him. Larry Sabato, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
Coming up, a 911 call leads officers to a knife-wielding man on a residential street. They have to clear the area to get everyone out of the way because the bad guy isn't about to drop that knife. More, the explosive body cam is up next. We're on scene tonight with police in Mesa, Arizona, showing the dangers that officers face every day. This incident started with a 911 call.
A guy at front of my house is coming with a knife in the hand, and I don't know why the guy is blocking my front.
What's the address? He broke your windshield?
And yeah, my car.
While officers were on the way, dispatchers received another 911 call from a woman who knew the suspect, Caleb Stanford, and said her husband was threatening to shoot Stanford.
Help me right now. Caleb, right now. He's got a knife.
What unit number are you, ma'am?
Drop it! Drop it!
Who's that yelling at him?
That's my husband. He's got a gun on him.
Now, officers arrived and saw Stanford in the street holding a large knife.
Caleb, get down on your hands and knees, now! On your stomach! Put your hands out!
Hey, we got Caleb proned out right now in the middle of the street.
All right, so he follows the officer's orders at first, but refused to drop the knife, even as he got on the ground. Now, as officers were directing people to stay out of harm's way, Stanford got back up.
Hey, you back there, get inside, get out of our fire. Get out of our fire. Get down on the ground. Caleb, get down on the ground now. Do me a favor and drop the knife, and then you and I can have a conversation, all right?
So Stanford started walking towards police, still with knife in hand.
Stop! Stop! Stop!
Officers fired, hitting Stanford. Police gave Stanford first aid until paramedics arrived. He died at the hospital. Officers had tried, apparently, to get Stanford help multiple times in the days leading up to the shooting, but he refused assistance. Turns out 4 officers fired their weapons. It was the first shooting on the job for each of them. No officers were injured. The incident remains under investigation. Joining me now, Sean Sticks Larkin, retired Tulsa police lieutenant. All right, Sticks, take me through this from the officer's perspective.
Yeah, you know, when the calls are coming in over the radio, you've got 2 calls, 2 different people calling in. They know for sure this guy is armed when they're showing up. Is he an armed, home invasion suspect? Is it a combination of drugs or alcohol? Is it a mental health issue? They don't know what his intent is, excuse me. So when they show up, that's going to be their focus, is trying to, locate this guy and keep him in a position away from not only the people that are already calling 911, but any other citizens that are out there, which is exactly what you hear one of the officers do. He's trying to clear his backdrop in the event they have to fire. They don't have any innocent civilians downrange.
All right, were you surprised that all 4 officers fired? I mean, look, this is the first time each of these officers had ever fired their weapon as well.
Yeah, so, the suspect had a knife. Initially, he does comply, then he starts walking towards the officers. And one of these things that is shown over and over and over again in studies is what we in law enforcement refer to as a 21-foot rule. Somebody can basically cover 20 to 25 feet in 2 seconds, and that's on average as a person. So here's a guy that's armed with a knife advancing towards officers. I think they gave him roughly 10 different commands to drop the knife, to stop. We don't want to hurt you. We're here to help you. As far as all 4 officers firing, if each of those 4 perceive a threat, whether it's towards themselves or to another officer, it's justified on why they would all shoot. Another issue is we talk about less lethal oftentimes and things like this. When you listen to the body cams, you can hear them asking for somebody with a beanbag round, a less lethal shotgun, to get there on scene to hopefully use that. The taser and the OC spray, they're just not an option, unless you're very close to somebody, and you can't do that with somebody armed with a knife.
Do you think he wanted for them to shoot at him? I mean, the way he's walking towards them with the knife, sort of calmly approaching police like that?
Obviously I can't answer for, his state of mind at that time. My suspicion is, he was aware. He did listen to commands initially and laid down when they told him to do so. He at some point obviously made this decision to walk towards the officer with a knife in his hand. It's well documented what happens if you go, armed with a weapon towards police officers. This is something that's very likely going to have that type of result.
And it turns out this is someone that they had tried to get help for the last few days previous to that as well. He wouldn't take it.
Exactly. And again, I'm just only making an assumption. It's a mental health type of issue as a possibility when they're trying to get somebody help. It varies by state on when law enforcement can, take somebody into what we call an emergency order of detention to get them into a facility where they can be evaluated. Unless they typically make a threat with law enforcement officers present that they want to harm themselves, we can't basically kidnap somebody and then go take them to a facility. They have to want to do it on their own.
Yeah. All right. Sean Larkin, as always, thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, that does it for us tonight. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.